Hi everyone, I hope you're well. So this is a requested video about memorization. How do musicians memorize millions of notes and play by heart? Well, it's actually not just simply about memorizing the order of notes and their rhythms. And on broad terms, I think there are two different kinds of memorization processes. One is mental and the other one is physical. And it's when you have gone through both that you have really memorized a piece of music. So I've broken it down to 6 steps. Step number 1, sing the piece. I think this is the most natural and the easiest way of starting to memorize a piece of music. And you don't have to sing out loud. You can be singing in your head, like when you're not practicing. For example, when you're brushing your teeth, or when you're cooking, or when you're just commuting or out and about. And you know when you get stuck at some point and you can't remember the rest of the phrase, or when you can't remember what's coming up next, that's how far you've memorized a piece. And I would say that as a general marker, you've memorized a piece when you can sing the piece from beginning to end without stopping. Step number 2, solidify your interpretation. So just because you can sing the piece from beginning to end without stopping in your head doesn't mean that you've memorized exactly how you want to perform this piece. So this requires obviously that you've already explored different possibilities of how to play this piece, like where are you going to start and preparing for a big build up to the climax, or where and how do you want to take liberties in tempo. And so you need to also memorize these little things that your intentions behind each phrase. And I find this step particularly difficult when I'm coming back to a piece after a long time and I have to sort of unmemorize things that I did in the past. Sometimes the old habits, come back, and because, if you practice a lot and you've memorized it in a certain way, it's hard to undo, just like any other bad habits you have in life. So yeah, I guess it's not just on the violin, but also in life. Step number 3, internalize your fingerings and bowings. So this is really about muscle memory, but it's also related to the previous step because I think bowings and fingerings reflect your interpretation, and you shouldn't really make these decisions purely based on practical reasons. So step 2 and 3 should really happen at the same time. And the purpose of this step is really so that your finger movements are almost automatic by the time you get to the stage. So this includes intonation and just a general feeling in the body, in addition to fingerings and bowings. And this ability to recall what it feels like when you play exactly the way you want is really important on stage, and it can be such a big confidence booster. When you have this big passage, difficult passage that you kind of are worried about and agonizing over from the very beginning of the performance, when it doesn't go well, you know it's not going to go well before you even play it because it doesn't feel quite right. But when you can then recall that feeling, what does it feel like when you're approaching that thing, or when you have a big shift or something, just the feeling of preparation, if you can recall what it feels like, usually it goes well. And so this bodily feeling and internalizing that can be really, really important. Step number 4, build an interpretation with your collaborator. So as a violinist, we play most of the times with other musicians, so let it be duo partner, chamber music partners, or an orchestra. And to play well together, you need to kind of agree on an interpretation and understand the chemistry between you and the other players. And this is why we have rehearsals, to make these decisions. This also means that even if you've gone through all the previous steps and you've memorized and figured out how you want to play it, you may have to be flexible to adjust and change that interpretation so that you can create a group interpretation. And this kind of rememorization process is not just about mental activity, actually. It's also, you have to memorize what it feels like to play with those particular players with your body, especially when you have to give signs for synchronization, what we call cues. And that kind of gesture that you give with your body can be quite different from group to group depending on who you're playing with. Step number 5, don't look back, keep going. So in your practice room, if you make a mistake, you can always go back and fix it. But when you're on the stage, you can't do that because you only have one chance. So even if you have a memory slip or your collaborator has a memory slip, you just have to keep going because music continues. And accidents happen all the time and it's quite normal, but you have to be flexible to adapt and quickly jump back in. And to have this sense of calmness and flexibility, you really need to know the music inside and out. And so this is why memorization is really important. I think this applies even when you're playing with sheet music. You should always have the piece almost memorized. Playing by memory does require some practice, and you can definitely start in your practice room. You can decide, okay, now I'm going to play through the piece without the music, and whatever happens, I'm just gonna keep going. And then you can, invite some of your friends and play for them and see what happens, because, the first time you play through a new piece by memory and you have some adrenaline, you often find some weak spots in your memory, and that just knowing that is very important so that when you're on the stage, you can be really confident. So to conclude this video, I would say that the point of memorization isn't to play by heart or to play without sheet music. It's so that you can be free and spontaneous on the stage without the fear of not knowing what the next note is or what's coming up next. And so setting your goal this way maybe will help you approach memorization differently. Thank you so much for watching and see you in the next one.